Hello, welcome to St Helen's Church. I understand that you've come to have a look round to see if you can find things to write about for your school magazine, is that right?
Yeah.
Then why don't you come inside and have a look? Wow! It's great, isn't it? There's so much in here that you can see. I'm sure you'll find such a lot to write about. For example, over there we have a 15th century effigy of a pilgrim from the medieval period. But do you know what? We know nothing about him.
If only we could go back in time.
Oh, hello. Who are you?
Hello, I'm a pilgrim from the 15th century.
Why did you become a pilgrim?
Well, when my feet were sore and the wind was blowing, I used to ask myself that question lots of times. There'd been lots of talk in the town about going on pilgrimages, especially from the priests, and I suppose I came to believe that if I walked all that way and made lots of sacrifices, and went to pray at this special holy shrine, then I might be forgiven my sins. And if that happened, then I'd got a better chance of getting to heaven.
Where did you travel to? For how long?
Well, I went to the Church of St James, and that's in Spain. And it was a place called Santiago de Compostela. And it took months and months to get there.
Have you got any money? And if so, how much?
Yeah, I started with a few coins and I managed to sort of perhaps get a few extra on the way. But mainly relied on people's generosity to give us food and accommodation.
How did you afford to get to Spain? Did you sneak onto a ship?
Oh gracious no, it would be far too expensive to go to Spain on a ship. We walked down to the south of England and then crossed the sea to France. And from there we tramped all the miles on foot, right through sort of France and down over the mountains and across Spain. That's why it took so long.
What did you take with you?
As little as possible. When you're walking all that way, you don't want extra weight. I've got my clothes, my hat to keep the sun and the wind off, and I've got my staff, my scallop shell, and then my knapsack and a few coins in there and my prayer beads. Oh, and then a newfangled thing, a little mirror with a folding cover. So they say you can get the spirit of a place and take it home with you. So when I was at the Church of St James in the big service, I held my mirror up to the altar and then I shut the lid, and I'm not going to open it again until I get home. And then when I'm home, I'll open the lid and hopefully the spirit of St James will live on in my house. That's what I'm hoping.
What did you eat on the journey and where did you get it from?
Well, there was a variety of things. This scallop shell, they gave us that at the start of the journey, and that shows I'm a real pilgrim. And when we used to show that on the way, then people would let us sleep in their churches or abbeys or hospitals. And then also they'd just give us food, and usually they gave it to us without wanting any money. But it was quite often bread or cheese, and then water to drink. But sometimes we got a bit of wine.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Who are you?
My name is Zadok. I am a soldier of the English Civil War.
How did the Civil War start?
The Civil War came about when the king wanted to raise more taxes from the people. To do this, he needed to recall Parliament. Unfortunately, Parliament didn't agree with the king in the raising of taxes, so they fell out. The king raised his army at Nottingham, and Parliament then raised an army, and the Civil War had started.
What was important about Ashby Castle?
Ashby Castle was a strategic part of the country. It was in the Midlands on main turnpike roads. It was also owned by the Hastings family, who were supporters of the king.
Why did the royalists hide in the church?
The church was always looked upon, all churches were looked upon as sanctuaries for anybody that wanted to be protected. Soldiers would actually come into the church as a sanctuary so they wouldn't be attacked. A lot of churches, and possibly this could be one, that were built near the castle had a tunnel from the crypts in the church through to the castle, so soldiers could then move between the castle and the church. It's also been rumoured that in Ashby there was a tunnel from the castle to the Bull's Head, which was the old inn in Market Street, and that way people could move at night from the Bull's Head into the castle and back. And that would be one way of supplying the castle.
When they hid in the church and castle, how do they have enough food and drink?
All castles always kept a stock of food in case of a siege. They also all had sweet water wells, so there would be ample water inside the castle itself. They would have a lot of livestock inside the castle. They would have beast, sheep, sometimes swine, pigs, and chickens. And as and when necessary, these animals would be slaughtered for food. Plus the fact, if a tunnel did exist, they would also be able to supply themselves with food through the tunnel at night.
What inspired you to become a soldier?
This is a long story. I worked for Lord Grey of Gruby. I was a labourer on his land, and for that he gave me and my family a cottage. When the Civil War started, Parliament asked Lord Grey, who was a parliamentarian, to raise a company of men. He came round to the cottage and he said he would need me to go and fight for him and Parliament. I had no choice in the matter. Had I refused, I would have been turned out of the cottage, and therefore the family would not have a roof over their heads. He asked me how old my son Jonathan was, and I said 8, and he said he would be too young to come and fight, but he and your 2 daughters, his sisters, can stay at home and manage the farm with their mother while I was away. Had Jonathan been 14 or 15, he would have left to go and fight with us as well. So it was not my choice, and the inspiration was, if I hadn't have gone, I would have lost my home.
So, what did it feel like when you were fighting?
Frightening. When you think, until then, maybe the biggest crowd I'd ever been in was the autumn wakes, when we had a bit of a fair and farmers sold their livestock and produce, and they might be 300 or 400 people come from neighbouring villages. The biggest crowd I'd ever seen. The loudest noise I'd ever heard was thunder. Yet, when I was called to go and fight, we marched to Edgehill in Warwickshire. And when we got there, picking up comrades on the way, there was 30 or 35,000 people there. An amazing sight. I remember at night sitting there and looking over the valley to the hill and seeing all the fires and lights of the enemy. And then, of course, when the battle started, you're given muskets, you're taught how to fire a musket, you're there lined up with all your colleagues. And then our artillery opened up. These massive guns. We had 28 massive cannons going off. It was a terrifying sound. There was flames leaping out the barrel of the guns. There was smoke. You couldn't see the enemy for all the smoke. And the noise was deafening. Some people, some of our troops, just turned and ran. They were terrified. They said they were cowards, but they were not cowards. They might have had cowards' legs, because it was the legs that done the running, but it was an awesome sight. And then the enemy opened up. And a soldier not far from me cannonball had hit him and nearly cut him in half, broke him in half. And that frightens you as well. And then musket ball starts raining in and you're returning fire. And then you have to learn how to survive a battle. Because I was not interested which side won that battle that day. My only interest was surviving the battle and getting back home to my family.
Who are you?
Oh, don't come too close. I've got a terrible illness. They say I've got the plague.
What are the symptoms of the plague?
Well, at first I just thought I got a very bad chill. I was shivering and aching all over. And I just felt generally poorly. And then these great swellings came up under my armpits. A terrible weakness has overcome me.
What did you do to try to get rid of the plague?
Well, I'm not eating anything, and I'm drinking arsenic and mercury to kill the germs. My neighbour, she knows a lot about cures. She's given me some herbs that might help, and an incense to burn to try and cover the terrible smell.
How did you feel when you saw your family suffering?
Oh, terrible. Heartbroken. Oh, I couldn't bear to see them suffering like that. And I was afraid if my husband died, we'd have no means of support at all. I've cried myself to sleep at night. So it's awful to think I can do nothing to stop their suffering.
Where is the rest of your family?
Well, some of them have died and been buried, taken away to be buried. Some of them have run away, thinking they can escape from the plague.
Why is your house boarded up, and while you're in here, how do you get your food?
Well, when we were taken ill, people came and boarded our house up so that we wouldn't go out and spread the terrible illness to others. They left us some food and we've just had to eke it out. They say that if we survive for 40 days, then we may get let out.
Why do they want visitors to keep away from the plague pit?
Oh, there's a skull and crossbones on the church gate. That means there's plague pits in the churchyard. It's where they bury the bodies of those who've died of the illness. Oh, nobody should go near the plague pit for fear of catching the terrible illness. They say it's very catching.
Who are you?
My name is James Worstel and I'm the constable to the parish. I was appointed by the Earl of Huntingdon, the Right Honourable Earl of Huntingdon, and it's an honorary role. I was voted into the post by the court leet, and I stand for 12 months. And it's my job to make sure that there's no crime in the parish. So I look after the lockup. That's where we put people who are drunk or have caused a fray, just so they can sober up or quieten down. I'm also allowed to put people in the stocks and the pillories so that everybody in the town can see anybody who's done a misdemeanour. I'm also allowed to whip vagrants. Now, vagrants are the unemployed and the tinkers and so on. We don't want them in our town, so I'm able to whip them out of the town. I don't have any jurisdiction over the gallows. Well, first of all, we don't have any gallows in Ashby. So what I do is I escort the prisoners to the assizes where the full force of the law can be brought down upon them. I'm also able to fine people who may put a fence up that's not on their land, or worse still, throw rubbish and dung out into the street. I am not having dung in our streets. And then finally, I'm able to raise the militia. And the militia is the local army. Mainly farmers, labourers. We give them a uniform, we tell them what to do. And I quite like that, because I was a soldier myself. I joined the army during the Jacobite rebellion, because the soldiers the Scots got so close to Ashby at Swarkston Bridge, I thought I was going to do something about it, and I fought at Culloden. Now, I believe you've come to ask me about the candelabra.
When did you find out that the candelabra was stolen?
It was on Tuesday morning. The church wardens came to me and told me that the previous night that 12 branches of the candelabra, which is above us, was stolen by villains.
What else was stolen from the church?
The church wardens also told me that 2 pulpit cloths of crimson velvet with gold trim had been stolen, and also 2 surplices, the shirts that would be worn during officiations. They also apparently broke open all the chests and boxes in the church in the hope of finding the communion plate. Well, the communion plate is made of silver and is therefore very valuable. Thankfully, the church authorities keep those elsewhere.
Were the 2 men caught, and were they local?
Well, we haven't caught them yet, but I will, rest assured. We have got 2 suspects. The locals in the George Inn on Monday night saw 2 strangers. One was quite a tall man with his own hair rather than a wig, and the other was a small, shifty, ill-looking character. So I suspect those are our two men. They were quite young, so they would have the strength to be able to lift the candelabra down. There was a piece of evidence found at the time of the burglary, and this was an handkerchief with a map of America on it. Now, I thought this was quite strange at the time, and concluded that these 2 men may have been sympathisers with the revolutionary forces out in Virginia who have started this dreadful war, and have only recently voted for independence from our king, and I find that insolent and an insult to this country.
How might the robbers have got away?
Well, we don't know, but on the same evening it was reported that a horse was stolen, a black mare, about 6 years old, 14 hands high, and she has got some very distinctive markings. There is a white star on her forehead, as well as the evidence of a scar to the underside of her belly, so she must have been involved in some accident at some time or another. So we assume that the burglars made their escape, their quick escape, quite a big horse, on that horse. I've put out a notice into the local newspapers asking for information to their apprehension, and I've also made an offer of 10 guineas for any information that leads to that apprehension. The gentleman who owns the horse has also made an award of 2 guineas for anybody who can give him information about who has stolen his horse.
Did you take the stolen goods back? If so, who found them, and how long did it take to find them?
Well, we found the branch of the candelabra. Sadly, we haven't found the pulpit cloths, the horse, or the robbers, which is very annoying. The candelabras were found thrown into a hedgerow at Lount, near to the coal pits. And so I employed a couple of men for over a couple of days to just hunt down the robbers, the horse and the candelabras. Sadly, we only got the candelabras back.
Why might the thieves have thrown away the candelabra instead of selling it?
Well, I find it an absolute crime against the state to even break into a church and steal something like this. So I think it's a heinous crime, and I can only assume that the candelabra was thrown away or stolen because the thieves thought it was made of gold. Well, it's not, it's made of brass, and they just threw them in the hedgerow because they thought there was no money to them. So all their efforts were in vain. The vicar was very pleased to get the candelabra back because it was given to the church about 40 years ago by the Piddock family. So it was quite an important item for the church. So we haven't yet caught the perpetrators of this crime. We have got the candelabra back, and thankfully it's back in its rightful place. And my job of constable carries on. I'm coming up for re-election this year. Should I re-stand?
Yeah.
All right, then I shall stand again.
Who are you?
I'm the church warden, and this lady, well...
What did you do to have your finger put in the pillory?
I was in the service and my mate was asleep and I was just whispering and I got hauled out. I got done it behind my hand, caught me, that was it, got pulled out.
Did the finger pillory hurt and did it leave scars?
Yes, it hurts, it pulls. My fingers are too fat to get in there properly and it makes them sore and it leaves a really nasty red mark. It's not nice.
How did you feel about the punishment for your crime?
Well, it wasn't really fair. She was asleep. I was just trying to pay attention to the rector doing their sermon. She was asleep. I was trying to wake her up. She was the one who wasn't paying attention, not me. I was concentrating.
Do you think that the use of the finger pillory was a fair punishment, and was it really necessary?
Certainly. Without punishments like this, we'll have wretched people whispering and giggling through the sermon. Some even fall asleep. The children are the worst. They need firm discipline. That'll keep them in check.
How did people react when you put them in the finger pillory?
Some people get angry and even argue with me. Others cry and beg for mercy.
How do you think the people felt when they were in the pillory?
They feel ashamed, and so they should. The pillory's just for this purpose. Keep people in check.
Over there. Hello, who are you?
Hello, I'm Edward Mamet, the church organist.
As you were blinded at the age of 6, did you find your future life hard, and if so, in what way?
It was very hard at first. I was just a small boy, and I couldn't understand why it was always dark. I was afraid to walk about in case I bumped into things and fell over. I couldn't find anything, couldn't even find my own clothes and shoes to put on. But gradually I learned to feel my way around, and my sense of hearing became very sharp, which helped a lot.
How did you learn to play the organ?
I learnt where the different pedals and keys were by touching them and listening to the sounds. While I was still quite young, the man who'd been the then church organist, he taught me a lot and showed me how to practice until I was good enough to play in the services.
How did you know so much about the planets when you can't even see them?
Well, it's true that I couldn't see the planets, but then most people can't see them either because they're so far away. One of my teachers sparked my interest by reading to me from some of his books. I used to picture these strange words in my head, and I wanted to learn as much about them as I could. Later on, my wife and friends would read to me, but I wasn't content merely to read. I wanted to write about all sorts of things and compose music. So I invented a machine which allowed me to do that, even though I'm blind.
As you are blind, how did you feel when you invented the machine? Were you full with pride or not happy with it?
Well, I'm a modest man, so I wouldn't say that I was full of pride, but I was very pleased with the machine. It worked very well and it helped me, and people had similar problems to my own. Actually, I must admit, when I was awarded a gold medal by the Royal Society, I did feel rather proud, but I tried not to show it.
What subjects did you learn at school?
We studied Latin and theology mainly, but one of my teachers knew that I was interested in music and science, so he introduced me to people who were able to help me learn more about those subjects as they weren't taught at my school.
What was your favourite subject at school?
Well, I had a particular passion for music, but also for scientific subjects as well. Anatomy, astronomy, geology, etc. Sadly, those subjects weren't taught in my school, so I had to learn about them elsewhere.
Oh, hello, me ducks. How are you? All right. My name's James Smith, and I'm a stonemason's labourer.
How were people chosen to work on the church extension? Who chose you?
Now, that were they church folk, you know, the rector and the parish council and the like, you know. Now, they brought a man up from London, Lambeth it was, yes. Now, his name was Mr. Eyre, Mr. Thomas Eyre. Now, he brought with him some skilled men. Oh, they were really skilled stonemasons, they were. Now, later on, another Mr. Eyre, James Earp, he came and whatnot. Now, he were a very skilled man, he was. He could make most beautiful carvings you're ever likely to see in your life. Now, we local men, we were brought on to do labouring type of work, you know, lifting, carrying, that sort of thing. And with my mind, we were glad on it, we were. I've done all kind of labouring jobs in my life, but this was one of the hardest. Oh, wow, yeah. But end of the day, we all had to say that it were a right privilege to be working on this church.
How did they get all the stone for the extension?
Oh, stone, yes. Well, most of that would come from local quarries around this parts, you know, Breeden, Worthington, such like, you know. Lot on it came on railway down here at Station Ashby. We had to go up there and load it on horse and cart and fetch it here to church.
How much do stonemasons get paid for working, and how many hours a day do they work?
Oh, well, see, now, as a labourer, I don't know about a stonemason, but as a labourer, I was getting 13 shilling a week. Now, my wife, she'd be wanting maybe 9 shilling out of that for our food and such like. Now, we had to pay rent, and we had to buy coal for fire, you know, in winter time special. And then, well, that didn't leave much for clothes and boots and such like, do it, eh?
Were you ever hurt while working on the church? And if so, how did you feel?
Oh, yeah. I fell from that scaffold. I was hurt bad. I was in such a lot of pain. I cracked my skull down here and I hurt my back, and well, it was a bit of a worry, like, you know, because we were thinking we were going to starve because I couldn't work and there was no money coming in, but we was lucky. See, we were lucky because I was working on church. We got money from parish fund that kept us going till I were able to get back work, you see.
How hard was it to make the carved heads?
Oh, very hard, very hard. I couldn't do it myself, no. That's why, see, Mr. Earp brought up his skilled men from Lambeth, see. Now, as I say, we local fellas, we were just doing, you know, labouring, the fetching, carrying and clearing all the dross and all the rough cutting, like.
What was the most interesting part of the work?
Oh, it were all very interesting, you know, all very interesting. Yeah, I could see watch them all day, I could. But we had to work, so whenever I got chance, I was helping Mr. Earp's men doing their work, so I could sit and watch them, you see, making all these marvellous shapes come out of a piece of stone like magic, you know. I was especially good in June time when they was working on that north door. How they made there some of the most beautiful carvings you ever seen in your life, yeah, there.
I hope you found plenty to write about. Thank you for coming. Take care going home.
Wish I'd been in church that day.